And we are hanging out thanks to the mega corporation Google. They definitely are pretty much encompassing the entire planet now and influencing things in their own unique fashion. So how are you this morning, Barrett?
I'm good. I'm good. I think that they have completely redefined that word. It was kind of googly eyes. Maybe you would have used that before, or I think at Google was like spelled a little differently. It was a one with 100 zeros behind it, so it was a really big number. But now no one really thinks of either of those things. It's about looking up people or things online, and we're a part of the Borg.
Yes, and but it's the happy side of the Borg, not the malefic side, so that's good.
Right.
Yeah. Unless, of course, you're one of those conspiracy theorists who are afraid of everything, which is an interesting kind of condition to have one's existence based in, because today's lesson is talking about that whole thing around judgment. And boy, is that ever a hugely fearful and fear-driven image for so many people. You know, there have been the movies made about it. I think one series was called Left Behind, you know, where Jesus comes and spaceships or whatever and takes a bunch of people and leaves everybody else behind. And it goes on and on and on. And it is so untrue, but so typical of the ego's interpretation of this whole journey that we're on.
Yeah, it's true that ego judgment always leaves some people behind. It's always some people are worthy of love and most other people are not. A lot of us are feeling like we're not worthy of that love in some way. But like you said, that's the part that's not true, because God's love is given to us all, and we are all worthy of it, because ultimately it is what we are. So we are definitely worthy of what our truth is. So a big part of, I think, our study of the Course is to deprogram these sometimes overt, but a lot of times subtle and unconscious beliefs that we have in unworthiness or hierarchies of worthiness, of love. And I think that the beginning of this section really speaks to it really nicely. Is each one to be judged in the end? Indeed, yes. No one can escape God's final judgment. Who could flee forever from the truth? But the final judgment will not come until it is no longer associated with fear. And I think that's the shift here. There's this shift from the fear-based judgment back to the peace. And the end of the paragraph is really nice too. This is the judgment that will set him free. This is the judgment in which all things are freed with him. Time pauses as eternity comes near, and silence lies across the world that everyone may hear this judgment of the Son of God. Holy are you, eternal, free and whole, at peace forever in the heart of God. Where is the world, and where is sorrow now?
That is really the core of the whole process that we're going through here, is to recognize that the dream is not real. And, it is that constant battle against the testimony of the senses. Our sensory experience in the material world really convinces us that all of this is solidly and firmly put into place by God. And yet all that God creates is eternal, and nothing that you see in the dream is eternal. This dream is just constantly, it's like a fish that jumped onto the boat, and you've got both hands trying to grab it, and it's slimy and slippery, and it eludes you. You can't hold on to it, and that's really what the day-to-day experience is. And the things that drive us, the things that we desire, the things we feel we need the most, if we look back, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years into the future, you probably won't even remember those things. They will all be forgotten. And that's the ephemeral nature of this realm. And we really have to keep that at the forefront of our thinking as we step, into each new day. So yes, it is an interesting thing, because it's really not even a judgment. It's merely a declaration of what is actually true, that we are, living in God and having a dream about living outside of God.
Yeah, and like that one saying in the Gospel of Thomas says that, a vine has grown outside the wall of the Father's kingdom, but it will be pulled up by its root and be gone. That vine is the whole ego thought system, and it's a weed that we don't really want, but we're still sort of holding on to it. The good news is, it is not really true, and it's inevitable that we're going to come to that realization on our journey. And that's really what we're doing here, is we're learning that, and then we're sort of clearing the brush out of the way. So when we find something in our lives that upsets us, when we go to the mall to do some shopping and there's a billion people and the lines are long, and we're never going to get everything done on our to-do list, those kinds of situations become our opportunities to say, okay, I can choose peace in this moment instead of upset. I can choose patience instead of impatience. I can choose kindness instead of anger. And these are the choices that build upon themselves one after another and form the foundation for realizing that nothing here really happened, that we can't be anything other than completely innocent.
Very true. And, one of the things that I find interesting is that a lot of references are made in the New Testament of the Bible, and actually in the Quran and a number of other sacred books, about a last judgment. And especially in Christian imagery, I've also been fascinated with that thought that, two will be on the rooftop, and one will be taken and the other left behind. And I think, by the age of 10 or 12, I figured that one out. And a lot of people miss that one. And it merely means that the second coming, or that awakening of the Christ within ourselves, is a very intimate thing, and it's a very personal thing. And so, you may be driving down the freeway one day and you have that epiphany, you have that contact point where you have that full realization. You have been taken back into the awareness of the Christ. And the people around you are oblivious yet. They're still waiting for their own epiphany, their own revelation, their own last judgment. So it is something that is geared to the individual. In other words, the Christ consciousness, the Holy Spirit and God, they're not going to sneak up on you and hit you in the head with a baseball bat and drag you off.
You're coming with me.
Yes, right. It doesn't work that way. The amount of patience that God has for the awakening of the sonship is infinite, because God is, number one, completely and totally unaware of time, and we're the only ones, who are on that timeline. So you may have one more incarnation or 10,000 more incarnations, but at some point you will finally awaken to that realization of your own divinity and of the intimacy of your relationship with God. So we really have to look at all these things that are considered to be sacred or holy text and expand our vision as to how we're interpreting them, and give ourselves a little bit more latitude to be able to allow the Holy Spirit or higher consciousness to interpret them for us on our behalf.
Yeah, and I think that point that you're making is actually just ties right into another part near the end of this section, where it says, you will be judged and judged in fairness and in honesty. There is no deceit in God. His promises are sure. Only remember that. His promises have guaranteed his judgment, and his alone will be accepted in the end. So his judgment is that we are loving, that we are innocent. Our judgment on ourselves is usually not so kind. But then he finishes here, it is your function to make that end be soon. It is your function to hold it to your heart and offer it to all the world to keep it safe. So again, whether it takes one lifetime or 10,000 lifetimes, that is really the only thing that we have any amount of control over, which is, are we going to accomplish our forgiveness lessons more steadfastly, or are we going to kind of drag our feet a little bit? The end is certain. The end of remembering that truth, it is not in question. The only sort of different possibility here is, how long are we going to wait to experience that truth, that oneness, that love?
Exactly. And, this is a good season of the year to, again, stop and honor the activity of the motion of the planets, the motion of the solar system here, because in 5 more days, we will see, or actually 4 more days, we will see the restoration of the advance of the sun, and the days will get longer, and more will be surrounded with light as opposed to darkness. And I think this is a good analogy for how we personally are dealing with the journey back home. Is that, there is the ebb and flow. We advance for a while, and then we recede, and then we advance and we recede. But I think that during the holidays that we're stepping into right now, there is that recognition that the sun is eternal. It's, the light of God is eternal. And it's only our turning away from that light that causes us to suffer a shortened day and an extended night. And so every time you get out and move around during this time of the year, pay attention to the angle of the sun and how long the shadows are falling across the land, because that's a good reminder that, the time of growth is just right on the horizon. And as we continue to grow and carry others along with us in that growth, we'll, perpetuate a outcome here that eventually will lead to the elimination of darkness in its entirety.
Yeah, it's true, because the darkness has never really been real. And the step before that total realization is, still living here, but seeing the falsity of lies, of seeing the falsity of anger, of pain. And there's a book called The End of Death out that's written by a woman, Nook Sanchez, and that's what we're coming to see, is that death never really was real, and we're accepting that more and more within ourselves. So in this season where it's sort of like the death of light, light is coming into its shortest time period of the year, we can come to see that these changes are just ephemeral, that they are just surface issues, and that deeper light, that deeper truth, that unending joy and love that God isn't really affected by all of the things that happen on the surface. So just like the surface of a lake can be very choppy during a storm, but the very deep levels of that lake will be calm, will be still. We can kind of choose where in that lake we want to be. When things may be feeling choppy, we can descend into those deeper levels of the water where it still is calm. Even while the storm is still raging, we can have that sense of peace within us.
That's very true. And, the ultimate judgment, I think, here is, again, looped back into that realization that we're always engaged in judging. But since we are part of a collective, the only judgment that we are making is against ourselves, either that or for ourselves. So every time you pass judgment on somebody else, and we can't reiterate this enough for people listening to the videos, people interested in the course, there is only one person here, even though it appears that we are infinite in form and fashion and color and ethnicity, etc., etc. The truth is, in the depths of our mind, in that realm of the unconscious mind, everything that is occurring is being processed as though we were thinking or we were doing to ourselves. And that really, I think, is the most important part of looking at judgment and recognizing that our judgment is something we should defer from and allow God's judgment to replace our judgment in every instance that we encounter what is seemingly another person.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about judgment, you can think about what a burden it really is. We have to always be finding reasons that something is wrong, that there's a problem, justifications for being bitter or whatever. This shift into God's judgment, the shift into the Holy Spirit's perception, is actually so much easier because, again, as we said, his judgment is that you are always completely innocent, that there has never been a happening which was a problem, which caused guilt or sin. This is very kind of antithetical to how we live our lives most of the time, but that's why this goes all the way to the true issue. It goes all the way to the basis of the whole ego thought system, and that's why it just feels like it's a little bit more direct than some other paths are, maybe kind of like all coming to the same goal, but the Course really aims you right for the heart of the issue so that you can step into that love more quickly. Along those lines, there are times as we study this where it seems things are getting harder than they normally do. And I remember somebody asking Ken Wapnick about that in one of his classes. And he said he shared an image that Helen Schuckman had received about the same question, about why sometimes things feel so hard. And the image that he gave her was that, if you want to get from one side of a mountain to another, one way is to climb all the way to the top of the mountain and then back down the other side. He said, but that would take a very long time. He said the more direct way is to actually go through the mountain. And in a sense, that's what we're doing as we're confronting our fears, as we're looking at these shadows within our mind, is we're going straight through the thickest part of the issue. But it's also the most direct path. And I think it's good to have that perspective because it gives us a little reassurance when things feel a little bumpy on the road.
Absolutely, yes. And the direct path very often is a way of reclaiming a lot of parts of our lives that we have left behind, that we feel a vacuum in some part of our consciousness, because it resolves all of the unfinished stories and all of the stories that had flawed outcomes, because it ultimately arrives at a point of absolute forgiveness. And so by the end of the day, we are given a much better image of who we actually are and what the content of our existence actually is.
I like that. There are no dangling participles in truth.
That is very true. And as we approach the actual advent of Christmas now, which is a week away, I'm sure that you're going to be traveling and I'm going to be gallivanting all over the place. But I do want to extend to everybody who participates in our videos with us, and to you, Barrett, wonderful, wonderful awakening as this Christ consciousness is once again reborn into this earthly realm.
I think that's beautiful. Whatever it is that each of us celebrates this holiday season, we can really set our intention and set our goal to realizing that the Christ is born in each of us in this and every moment. And by letting that be sort of our gift, both to ourselves and everyone else, we can really make this a beautiful holiday season.
Absolutely. Well, my friend, may your journeys be blessed and rewarding. And I will chat with you at some point in the not distant future.
Sounds good, Chris. All right. Much love, brother.
Much love. Take care.
All right.